Real Yakuza approve of Yakuza. That's something you'll hear and see a lot of, but is this actually true? This is something I sort of talked about in my Tatara video, but I don't like that video, and it's an idea that deserves its own video. What am I talking about? Real Yakuza approve of Yakuza 3. Minor spoilers for Yakuza 3. Following the Western release of Yakuza 3, there was an article published that interviewed 3 Yakuza and their thoughts on Yakuza 3. The reason why I'm mentioning this article is because 99% of the time you hear people say, "Real Yakuza approve of Yakuza," they'll link to this article, and only this article. Now, I'm not saying that real Yakuza can't approve of Yakuza. There are examples out there of former Yakuza members seeing it and talking about it. I'm just saying that this example, this specific article that is constantly referenced and thrown around, is one that should be looked at and questioned for legitimacy. I feel like you see it so much that it almost becomes a meme, like Kiryu doesn't kill or Ichiban is schizophrenic. Or maybe it's something that people just parrot over and over again until they believe that it's true. But anyway, let's talk about the article. Zofter. The author of the article, Jake Alderstein, let's just say he's a little controversial. He's most famous for writing Tokyo Vice, and he's also known as a journalist in Japan, whatever. I was originally gonna have a whole section talking about him, but this isn't a hit piece or anything. And plus, you're not here to learn about Jake Alderstein, right? He dramatizes stuff, and he might be lying. But who cares? Do real Yakuza actually approve of Yakuza? Now, let's talk about the article. The article is very old. It was published back on August 10th, 2010, and nobody really cares about it except for me, I guess, because I don't think anyone has made a video on this article. Point is, it's been a long time. This article has been forgotten about, and the people involved might have changed or gotten better at writing. This article might not be representative of how good of a writer they are, but even so, I'm still gonna break it down. I am gonna be nitpicking, but I'm also gonna try to be fair. Nobody wants to watch a guy who's so blinded by his own hubris that he just nitpicks everything. And once you're negative and just nitpicking everything, of course things are gonna have problems. Nothing is perfect. Not even the greatest TV show of all time is perfect. It's still gonna have problems, but if you're nitpicking, of course it's gonna seem like oh, I guess people do like watching that stuff. The article titled Yakuza 3 Reviewed by Yakuza was published on boingboing.net on August 10th, 2010. Off the bat, we already have something a little sketchy. I'm not gonna say anything, but if you get your news from a place called platplap.com, it's probably not gonna be the most credible thing ever. We are introduced to Jake Alderstein through Lisa Katayama, and then Alderstein breaks down what he's gonna do. It's a Thursday afternoon in Tokyo. He goes to a real estate business that is a front for the Yakuza. Ooh, and he's gonna teach them how to play a console game. He's able to get 3 anonymous Yakuza to play and review the game. These 3 Yakuza, according to Alderstein, are named Shirokawa, Midoriyama, and Kuroishi. Alderstein says that out of the 3 Yakuza, only Kuroishi is able to finish the game. Either I'm stupid, or something doesn't make sense here. Alderstein came in on a Thursday afternoon and made 3 different guys play Yakuza 3, but only one was able to finish it. Finish the whole game. The whole 20-hour game? The conversations that the 3 Yakuza have give the impression that they're all playing the game together. So they played this game together, 2 of them left, and only one of them is able to finish the entire thing. That's fine. But in one sitting? Is this guy Froob? What the? If you think that Kuroishi didn't finish the whole game, he mentions Sayama's outfit later. This means that he must have seen Sayama early on in the game. Maybe he saw Sayama in the relationship chart. That could explain how he saw her outfit. But still, beating the entire game that you've never played before in one sitting, is he already in the final chapter? For someone who needed to be taught how to play a console game, he sure picked it up pretty fast. What a generational talent. Moving on, the 3 Yakuza talk about foreigners in a not very nice way, and they also say that crystal meth should be a power-up for Kiryu. Midoriyama forgets whether or not Kiryu can smoke and says that it should be a power-up in the game. no one ever bothers to chime in and say that technically, Kiryu can smoke. He can do it in his idol animation. While this isn't the same as drinking sake because it's not in your inventory, it's still related to smoking. Midoriyama wanted to know if Kiryu could smoke in this game or not, and yeah, he can. I guess none of them bothered to set the controller down for 10 seconds. That's weird. But hey, Kiryu has two idle animations, one where he crosses his arms and the other one where he smokes. Maybe they just went through the entire game without ever seeing him smoke. I actually struggled to get Kiryu to smoke too. He crossed his arms like 3 times in a row. This reminded me of a post that said that Kiryu doesn't smoke when he's around Haruka or the other kids in Morning Glory, which is not true. He has 2 idle animations. But that also made me think, this article never mentions Haruka or the other kids. Sure, the orphanage with cute kids is mentioned, and a Yakuza who runs an orphanage is also mentioned, but they never talk about Haruka. And why is this important? Because the Yakuza criticize Kiryu for getting into all of these street fights, but they never talk about how he can bring a kid into fights with him. I feel like that's a really big deal. If you're gonna talk about how Kiryu could get kicked out of the Tojo clan for constantly getting into fights even though he's not even in the Tojo clan, then I feel like you should talk about him bringing and endangering kids by getting into fights. This isn't even mentioning how they completely misunderstand that Kiryu isn't picking fights. The game makes this explicitly clear by having enemies stand still. And when you engage in fights with them, they're the ones that are insulting you and threatening you. They're the ones that start the fight, not Kiryu. The point is that despite being such a big deal, Kiryu's family is never directly mentioned. And even though they are in your face and in the topics that the Yakuza talk about, they go completely unmentioned. Next, they talk about the portrayal of the Yakuza and the fashion of the game. Quote, the corporate Yakuza guys get a thumbs up for realism. Nice suit, smart, financially savvy, obsessed with money, sneaky and conniving, ruthless. Maybe I don't remember Yakuza 3's story, but to me only one guy fits this description. Mine. But I'm also not a Yakuza, so I don't know how they actually are. When talking about clothes, Midoriyama has a problem with Kiryu's shirt. He says that it makes him look like a host and a low-level thug instead of a former boss. Midoriyama is said to be a retired boss of a mid-level faction, and he's wearing sweats and a Doraemon sweater. Yet he still criticizes Kiryu for wearing a bright red shirt. That's got nothing to do with the credibility of these guys, I just think it's kinda stupid. Something else that's odd is that they don't ever mention Kiryu's Okinawa outfit. Maybe it's not that important, or maybe they didn't care because it's not supposed to be a Yakuza outfit. They also don't talk about the outfits of the Ryukyu Yakuza. Maybe they didn't say anything and it wasn't included because they're Tokyo Yakuza and they don't have the right to judge that stuff. But Kiryu is criticized for having a red shirt. Yet Tamashiro, who wears a bright red suit, is never talked about. That's just a little weird. They continue to talk about the outfits. Quote, except for Kiryu's crappy shirt, it's realistic. The top executive Yakuza are all wearing good suits. They look like businessmen. Are you sure? What about Majima? He's one of the top executives that you see very early on. Does this guy look like a businessman to you? He's not wearing a good suit. His suit is snakeskin, and he also has an eye patch. I feel like if Kiryu's red shirt is a big deal, they should also talk about the guy wearing a literal eye patch. Oh, but you got me. Majima does wear a suit. It's even made easy for us to understand who the top Yakuza are. Majima is wearing a suit in a meeting with all the top Yakuza. However, Majima's suit has a bright red shirt. Kiryu was criticized by Midoriyama for wearing a bright red shirt, even though he's a retired Yakuza and doesn't do business with them. But when it comes to Majima, who has an even brighter red shirt, who is still in the Yakuza, and who is one of the highest ranking officials in the Tojo clan. He looks like a businessman and is never mentioned beyond that. But what about Kanda? That's not a nice suit, and he doesn't look like a businessman either. Kanda looks like he's gonna sell you illegal snake oil. They continue to a topic about how the fights in the game are unrealistic and how Kiryu would get kicked out of the clan for constantly getting into fights, and also how real life fights end quicker. I can't complain about that. That's insight. They're not exactly wrong, and especially with how long the fights are in Yakuza 3, I understand why they make a time comparison. However, trading blows. Huh? Trading blows in my Yakuza 3. But that's nitpicking. They ask why Kiryu just doesn't shoot people, and he can. But I totally understand if you forget, because the crafting in this game, that shit is dookie! The second to last section features the Yakuza talking about how realistic and accurate the story is. Quote, "The whole plot about resort expansion in Okinawa and the CIA and the politicians involved and all that, wow. That game came out last year, right? That's totally happening in Okinawa right now. The politicians and the Yakuza always have worked together. The game has got that right." Kuroishi does say that he doesn't buy the CIA being part of the story. And then they talk about Jake Allenstein and then just say, yeah, Americans make great villains. Then we get to the conclusion. Quote, "Overall, the game is favorably received by the 3 Yakuza playing it. While it vilifies organized crime in many parts, in the end, it glorifies the Yakuza and gives the protagonist just cause. It was good PR for their profession. Plus, it is not wildly off the mark in depicting the modern Yakuza." Ironically, the sections that Shirokawa seemed to enjoy the most were cut out of the US version: Mahjong, the sexual massage parlor, and the hostess clubs. After I explained to him what Sega cut from the US version, he said, "I feel sorry for the people who bought the American version. Sega USA sucks." End quote. Wait, I didn't say that before, so I don't think it matters if I say it now. That's that. That's the whole article. I did leave some things out, but that's for the sake of time. If you want to go and just read the article yourself, I'll link it in the description. Normally, I'd have a conclusion that recaps what I said and then gives my final thoughts based on all of the things that I talked about in the video. But I feel like that's harder to do here because there's only one thing to take away from this article. That's because I don't think there's a lot of meat on this article. It's like biting into a drumstick only to find out that the drumstick is actually styrofoam. It looks nice and it seems nice to have, but once you actually get into it, it's not really that good or tasty. The main takeaway is that this article just has way too many holes and contradictions. It's even worse when you consider that it has all these holes and contradictions despite claiming that it had 3 real Yakuza playing the game and one of them even finishing it. It's just weird, and to me, it gives the feeling of someone pretending like they played Yakuza 3 without actually playing it. It's like when someone watches clips on YouTube or YouTube shorts of a show, and then they think they have an understanding of that show. Wow, why don't they ever believe Dr. House? He's right all the time in these shorts I watch. It's not like before he gets the correct diagnosis, there's a 40-minute episode of him being completely reckless and misdiagnosing people. So, to answer that question, did real Yakuza approve of Yakuza 3? Hell no! Or if you want a more nuanced answer, probably not, with more probability that it's not than it is likely. But hey, that's all I got. Bye.